Guitar specs. Is it just a bunch of mumbo jumbo? No. It's actually really important, and one of the best ways to kind of find out what you like in a certain guitar, and if you want to maybe get another guitar or something similar or something totally different, how to be able to read the differences between a guitar's neck, its body, all the components, etc. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a close look at a rundown of a spec sheet for an Ernie Ball Music Man Albert Lee HH. And I'm also going to have some of the specs online for a Gibson Standard Les Paul and a Fender American Standard Stratocaster, just to kind of give you a little bit of context about how things can differ from one another. Now, there's a lot of different types and models of Les Pauls and Strats, but we're just going to take the 2016 Standard Edition lines, so let's get right to it. The first thing you're going to see is the model. So this is an Albert Lee HH. Now, the model is really important because a lot of times there are several types of models within one thing. So like there's not just one type of Strat. Sometimes there's deluxes, sometimes there's hot rods, stuff like this. For this guitar in particular, the HH is important because the HH stands for humbucker, humbucker. So they have another version of this guitar that comes in single coil pickups, which would be like a SSS, single, single, single. Sometimes you might see like a HSS version of a guitar. Usually that means there's like a humbucker and two single coil pickups. So a lot of times there are things in the name that are really important for you to understand. The next thing is just the size of it. So this guitar is 12 and 11/16 inches wide. Now this stuff is really important for shipping. Like if you're maybe buying something used off of eBay or something, or selling something, to know the shipping, this stuff is really important because for the most part, as you've probably recognized, a lot of guitars are very similar in size and weight. So the thickness of this is 1 3/4 inches thick, and the length is 36 and 9/16 inches long ways. So again, really knowing, just feeling a guitar, you'll have just kind of an innate sense of what fits for your body type and your arms and stuff like that. The actual minutia of the sizes is really important for shipping purposes. If you go on to weight, now this guitar weighs 6 pounds and 8 ounces. So I would say this is a lighter than average guitar. Just for some reference, like a Strat usually weighs somewhere between 7 and 9 pounds, depending on the make of it and the model of it. Les Pauls are heavier. The chambered ones can weigh less than 9 pounds. And when I say chambered, what that means is like a solid piece of wood, and part of it is kind of cut out in the middle. So it's not just like a solid piece of mahogany like some Les Pauls, which can get upwards of 11 pounds. So knowing how heavy your guitar is pretty essential. I kind of like them a little bit lighter, but I don't like them too light where they feel kind of cheap. So this one is under 7 pounds. Again, for a solid body electric guitar, I think that's a little lighter than average, but you'll see that kind of varies a lot too. So the body wood, this is made of an African mahogany. Now, the newer Les Pauls are also made of a mahogany body, and the Strats are made of alder wood, which is pretty typical for a Strat. In my opinion, the type of wood for the body of a solid body electric guitar isn't nearly as important as it is for an acoustic guitar, but there's a lot of debate online as far as like the different tones that certain woods and stuff will get you, because every wood does have a signature tone. Just in my personal experience, the pickups are a bigger factor than the wood, but the wood is important, so don't litter the comment section with a bunch of, oh, the wood is important, stuff like that. But on acoustic guitar, the wood definitely will have more of a character that is more easily recognized. Body finish, high gloss polyester. So a gloss finish is something that's really shiny. Like for here, you can kind of see it reflecting the light a lot of times. Basically, guitars are made of wood, and they need to be finished to kind of protect them from the elements such as moisture, changes in temperature, even just like the sweat from your hands and stuff like that can warp wood over time. So most of them are finished with some kind of like shellac, lacquer finish, something. So high gloss polyester is a good one. It seems to wear pretty well. That's what they use for these. The downside would be maybe that it kind of takes fingerprints pretty easily, and especially a black one, it can kind of reflect a little too much, but you know, that's just one type of finish. The body colors, I think you can probably figure out what that is. The bridge. So this is a standard Music Man strings through the body bridge of chrome-plated hardened steel with vintage steel saddles. So the bridge of a guitar is right here where the strings meet the body or go through the body. Again, so these are the saddles right here, and you can see they're chrome. And you can see on the back the strings come through the back. So if you're restringing it, you'd slide it through here and you pull it until the ball sticks in here. Now, not all bridges are like that. There's actually like a lot of different types of bridges, which I'm not going to get into right now because there's so many different ones and they all have their unique kind of things. But this is, you know, a pretty standard bridge and it works great. So the Pickguard, as you can tell, it's the thing that you can see bolted here to kind of protect the thing from the pick, which you could probably surmise yourself. But yeah, sometimes, especially on like Telecasters and stuff like that, you can really easily replace the Pickguard, so they're pretty customizable. You just screw them off, put a new one in. Scale length. Now this is 25.5 inches. This is a pretty important one. The scale length is the distance from the nut of the guitar all the way to where it comes in to the bridge, right? So essentially how long your strings are. Now 25.5 is pretty standard. Les Pauls have like a 24 3/4 inch scale length, and Strats have like a 26.5 length. So again, the numbers are pretty close, but if you actually pick them up in your hands and like feel them, you'll probably feel the distance of like a 1 inch scale length difference. So all this stuff is kind of important. The neck radius is 10 inches. Now, neck radius can be kind of misrepresented. Well, not misrepresented, but kind of confusing sometimes because you would think maybe like the neck radius is like how thick the neck is. That's actually not true. The neck radius is the curvature of the neck. So like like a 10-inch radius. If you think of a circle with 10-inch radius, and then you think of like how it's curved from 10 inches, the curvature of it is going to be how the neck kind of sits in your hand. And 10 inches isn't too wild. The new Strats have a 9.5-inch radius, and the new Les Pauls have what's called a compound radius. Now, what a compound radius is, it means it's not the same all the way through the neck. Usually what that means, it'll be one way, closer to the nut, and as you get closer to the body, the radius, the curvature of the neck kind of flattens out, which makes it arguably easier to kind of solo and bend when you get closer down to the higher frets. The headstock size is only 5 7/8 inches. Now, generally, most kind of generic spec sheets won't tell you what the headstock size is, but that's kind of a selling point for these. It's kind of what makes it special, and that's just another good reason to learn how to read a spec sheet, because you can kind of pick out what makes a certain guitar different, unique, or special, or even just learn a little bit about your own instrument and what makes it special, even if you already have it and you just can't really explain why you like it so much. Knowing these kind of measurement differences will help you understand the differences between any kind of make or model of a guitar. And again, this is just kind of a rundown of a generic spec sheet. You can get really in-depth, and usually on a guitar manufacturer's website, you can find like really, really detailed spec sheets. They have anything down to like the width between where the string sits in the nut and how it's different in like really, really micro measurements. But this is just kind of like a generic rundown. Frets, this has 22 frets, which is pretty common for an electric guitar, and they are medium width, which you can kind of just tell is like the thickness of the actual frets. Now, sometimes the amount of frets, because like a Strat and a Les Paul can also have 22 frets. Some like a PRS Custom 24, that 24 or 22, it stands for the amount of frets, because I wouldn't say like 24 is not an unusual number. If you ever see a guitar that has like another double dot thing down here at the very bottom of the neck, that usually stands for the 24th fret, so you'll know that has 24 frets. This brings us to neck width. I think neck width is actually probably one of the most important parts in how a guitar will feel, right? And you can measure it in a couple different ways, because necks often are tapered, which means they're a different width here as compared to down here. So generally the nut width is how wide it is at the top here, and then they might have like another measurement for how it is down to where it connects to the body. So the nut width for this is 1.625 as compared to a Les Paul, which is 1.695, or a Strat, which is 1.685. So just to kind of give you an idea, that doesn't sound like a lot, but this neck really feels much different to me than a Strat neck or a Les Paul neck, and a lot of that is the nut width. For example, like on a classical guitar, like a Cordoba C7 has a 2.04 neck width, which is really considerably bigger. Like if you've ever held a classical guitar, a lot of times the necks will seem a lot bigger, and that's just because the width is more. So that's definitely one of the first things you should check out, in how wide the nut is, because that's of paramount importance to how it's going to feel. And a lot of people have very specific recommendations or preferences for that kind of thing. The neck wood is select rosewood. So what does select mean anyways? There are different ways to grade lumber, and it's kind of a complicated process that I don't really know a lot about, but select just means it's like really good lumber. So this has a select rosewood neck as compared to like the new Les Pauls have mahogany ones, and the Strats almost always have maple necks. Now, the neck doesn't always mean the fingerboard is going to be of the same material. Like for this one, it actually is. It's like the rosewood fingerboard is also a rosewood neck. Like Les Pauls, for instance, they'll have a rosewood fingerboard on a mahogany neck, and Strats also too will have a rosewood fingerboard on a maple neck. That's why you'll see kind of like that dark to light neck thing going on with the Strat. Other Strats have just a maple fingerboard also that looks really great, but the type of fingerboard actually also affects the brightness of how a guitar sounds and kind of drastically impacts how it'll look too.